Hey, thanks to some observant viewers after I posted part one, the mystery of how you tune this has been solved. I never noticed there's a red line on this side going all the way across and a little bit of a black over here. I just assumed it was red going all the way across. So not surprisingly, the black lines up with the black dots and the red lines up with the red dots. So, for example, right now I was feeding in channel 3, so yeah, it tunes in around there, and channel 4 is around there. So thank you for that observation. Now I will proceed. Sorry, there was also some comments about polishing this up. Man, let's see. I just happened to get a magnet recently. Let's see if it gets attracted to this. No. Maybe this is brass. Same with the knobs. Maybe. That's a big maybe. I'm really wary of it. I was checking out the old video on mine. So I have this set as well. Mine is in much worse condition. So I'm sorry to say, but on mine this is just like gray. So I'm pretty sure this is just a gold wash color over cast aluminum or zinc or pot metal of some such. I think if I try doing anything to this, that silver gray is going to come through and it's going to look a whole lot worse than it does now. So I'm just going to leave it. Plus, I think the patina is kind of cool, like on this as well. I'm tempted to think this is brass, but I don't know. Here's the other thing, too. If I start cleaning it, it's kind of like, do it, really do it, or don't do any. Because if you really do it, you're going to have to do not only this and all this, and you may have to repaint the red and the black. That's a lot of work. I have some fantastic news. A fellow collector came through in a big way and supplied me with a high-quality scan of both the owner-operator's manual and the service manual. I just got them. I just started looking at them. Let's briefly go through each. This is the owner's manual. I'm guessing that is the plant, Stromberg Carlson plant. A lot of phone equipment, or at least handsets. You may be more familiar with them for that. Telephone, switchboard, sound equipment, and of course radios. Wasn't quite so successful with TVs. So they go through all the controls, explain the opera glass operation, or vertical horizontal hold, and how to set the brightness and contrast and tune it in for the best possible image, and they give you examples of how it might look if you don't have things set correctly. And they talk about sources of interference from electric motors, ham radio, reflections, ghosting, and so on. They explain about the separate antenna lead-ins for the high and low band. And there's a nice photo of the front with all the controls indicated. That's it. So what I think I'll do is take this over to a local print shop and see if they can print it out, double-sided paper, in color, of course, and try to get the fold down the middle so that I can recreate this manual for the owner and one for myself. Now let's take a look at the service manual. So Northern Electric Radio. So there was another version of this, a Canadian version, apparently. I've never heard of Northern Electric. And I've certainly never seen a Northern Electric branded set. Apparently they sold this model under the Northern Electric name in Canada, as near as I can make out. It's dated August 1950. I believe everything would be identical. Although they do mention it can go 25 to 60 cycle. There was 25 hertz power, I believe, around the Niagara power station for sure. Niagara Falls. They had 25 hertz power. I've seen some sets designed for 25 hertz operation, and they have larger power transformers, more filtering. But from what I briefly saw the schematic, they don't have a separate 25 hertz version. So perhaps the power transformer and filtering was sufficient that it could run under either frequency. This one talks a little bit more about the controls on the back, which the owner's manual didn't and some of the internal adjustments. There's tube lineup. Channel frequencies. Instructions on setting it up. And there's a, oh, nice. So there's a really detailed description of how to do the alignment. I may go through it. What I said nice about was this. I've seen something similar on other sets, Admirals in particular, where to feed in a signal, the IF signal, to do the alignment, you need to build a special tube shield. You don't feed the signal directly into the circuitry. You feed your signal source into a tube shield rigged up. This one's pretty elaborate, where you actually split it in half and put some 270 ohm resistors between the two halves. Then you put your high and your low of your signal source into that, and you'd slide it over a tube, so you'd be capacitively feeding the signal in. That's pretty wild. So the 270 ohm resistors would act as your termination. I've seen other instructions where you have to actually cut a pin off of a tube or bend a pin on a tube up to feed the signal in. Kind of crazy. There's another step where you have to rig up another circuit to feed the signal in or decouple it for reading the signal out. People have asked me many times to demonstrate how to align a TV, and this is the reason I don't. The instructions, especially if you get the factory instructions, are incredibly specific to this particular model. I have never seen anything like this for any other set. So I would not want to go into excruciating detail on how to align this particular model, because it will only be applicable to this particular model, not in general. But anyways, I do plan on doing some alignment videos in the future, and I'll try to keep it as general as possible. It's been a while since I talked about it. But because I have such detailed instructions, and I think the picture quality could perhaps be a little bit better than it is, I'd be interested in trying it. And this is some of the most detailed alignment instructions I've ever seen. Actually, we're 2/3 of the way through the server's manual. We haven't seen a schematic yet. It was all about alignment and setting up the set. Now we get into some examples of troubleshooting, where if you see these conditions on the front of the set, they tell you what to check for, or what they suggest some things to check for. We get some waveforms. That's something else you'll find is, for better or worse, so one thing I do like about SAMs is that they standardize things. Their schematics are generally all laid out the same way, and they give the same type of voltage resistance charts and so on. When you get the original stuff, especially for early sets, they all did it their own way. So somebody apparently hand drew these scope waveforms and just wrote on there what the peak-to-peak voltage should be. And here's our detailed part list, our tube placement diagram. And I noticed this. Apparently, if you paid extra money, you could get a 10FP4. That's the aluminized version. I'm not sure how much more they cost, but I suspect it was significant, because you don't see them very often. And this is nice. They give you the voltage readings for every pin on every tube, on both the top and bottom side. Notice it says Series 3, so that's one thing I was wondering about. So they have a different voltage chart for Series 1 and 2 and 3. Sorry, I thought that was the top and the bottom, but they're both on the bottom. They're different production runs. And that is one problem with the SAMs, is that there's just one issue with SAMs, but apparently there are 3 different versions of this set. And we get two schematics. This is schematic for runs 1 and 2, and this is for 3. I'm guessing 1 and 2 are close enough that they could share a schematic. So one thing I was puzzling about is my set had, I think, what was it, a 5 or 10 microfarad capacitor on the horizontal output tube cathode. What do they show on this? Oof, not so easy to read, but it sure looks like 5 microfarad to me. Let's see, this would be series 3, which would, I guess, be the latest. And also, was it vertical size large? I show a 1.8 meg. I thought, well, mine was hard to read, but I thought it was a 1 meg resistor. But maybe it was, should be 1.8. Let's check the other schematic. And that also is 1.8. And that also has 5 microfarad. It looks like a plus there. That's weird because both the riders and the SAM show a 0.22 microfarad cap there, which is more typical what you would see. I tried putting in a 0.25 on mine, and it seemed to work fine. But going off this, I'm thinking, well, I guess I should put 5 microfarad in there. That's something else to get used to, too, is from looking at this, I can see that what we would now call picofarads, they have a capital M, capital M, capital F. And then for microfarad, where we would have a mu and then an F, they have a capital M, capital F. Got to be careful about that stuff. Resistors are a little different too. Apparently they don't use kilo ohm anywhere, so they put 22,000 ohm with no comma, and then for the mega ohm resistors they type out MEG. No kilo ohms anywhere that I can see. I think you want to save them some trouble, so instead of writing 40000, put 470K. Wouldn't that be easier? Anyways. So this will be interesting to print out. For some reason the Series 1 and 2 schematic is clearer to read than the Series 3. But they're both certainly better than the rider's info, but some of the stuff on this is a little hard to read. Huh. Anyways. Very nice to have. Very nice to have. I've muddled my way through the service info I do have and have this working pretty well now. But I have not finished checking all the resistors. And I want to go over it again and check some of the parts that I was not 100% certain about. And I think I can trust this service info pretty well as far as the component values go. Now we're going in deep, because I just discovered that the front comes off fairly easily. 2 screws on either side, 4 across the bottom. You have to pull off all the knobs. The big channel knob is held on by some set screws. They're a little tricky to get at. And it's cast bronze, I think. And pretty darn beefy. So, now I can really get in there. I've been brushing and vacuuming out all the dust bunnies, and I have one cap removed. I just drilled out the rivets, came out very easily. Just clipped off all the terminals, getting ready to build up and adapt a cap, and I'll be doing the same for the other 2. I'm going to tip it on its side right now and see about removing this guy, so it doesn't have the 2 holes I would need to mount one of these. I want to see what's going on with this, and perhaps, well, I probably will end up drilling a couple holes so I can use one of these guys. Then the final one, of course, has a phenolic base, so that will be no problem to get that in. I've started cleaning this up a little bit too. I've discovered that putting on Windex and then waiting about a minute is perfect, and then it just slides right off. The front CRT was a little nasty, had a bit of nicotine glaze on it, got that all nicely cleaned up, so we'll have a little bit nicer picture next time we fire the set up. Well, I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but I did it. I took the other side off as well. Actually, I tacked the other side back on with a few screws to stabilize things, and I took this side off. These are the two reasons I didn't want to take this side off. I just have them kind of precariously balanced on the CRT bracket right now. If I don't bump into things, should be all right. With the side off, I can get in here and get the dust bunnies out and really get into those capacitors. So the middle one that I was speculating about, I forgot that it's mounted unusually, or was. It was a twist lock, but they didn't cut slots in the chassis and put it through and twist them around. It has bent a couple over and tack soldered it in place. Not the usual technique, so I am just going to go ahead and drill a couple holes for the new adapt a cap, but while I have this out of the way, I can get in here, and this one I will remount in a moment. We can replace this guy. It's been tough to get at. That's the 100 microfarad 6 volt DC cap, and then I can finally get at those two resistors, which are the very first thing I talked about when we started this project, which tested not terribly, but look absolutely horrible, so I will be replacing those two as well. And after I get these two done, I'll move on to this final one, which has a bunch of wires going by it. I'm feeding the set directly with its own signal source now, so in other words, a stronger signal, and the set does seem to be working better. It is twitchy to operate. If you don't have the station tuned in quite right, it starts losing hold, especially vertical hold. So that's what I'm kind of fighting with right now. Especially trickies, I don't have the big knob on there, so I don't have the mechanical advantage of a larger knob. I'm just trying to directly tune it with the shaft, which is touchy. And it definitely helps to watch the set in a dim room. Alright, that's pretty good. So I think all the major work is done now. I'm going to continue on with the detailing, cleaning it up, and do the usual, let it run for a few hours, power cycle a bunch of times over the next few days. Alright, time has come. Let's talk about the switch. Gotten a few comments and suggestions, but I think there's some confusion, including with myself, about what kind of switch this actually is. Well, I studied the schematic, I studied the wiring, and I finally have it figured out. There are 3 switches. I'm sorry, I'm not that sure about the terminology, but one of them has center part and then 2 potential positions. Single pole double throw. And we have another switch like that up here, where I can either be shorting this control out or shorting it to ground at that point. There's a third one, this guy, which is just single pole, single throw. It's either not there at all, or it's bypassing this control. Okay, how does that translate to this? Well, it took me a while to figure it out, because one of the contacts is completely gone. And that, I believe, is what our mystery wire used to go to. So there's one contact that's just, it's not here, it fell out or something. And that would have been right next to this guy. So it seems pretty likely what happened is the contact that had been here arced out, shorted out to this guy. We got some charring in there, and this contact is loose. You can just take it right out of the switch, and it is rather discolored. Now, all might not be lost because the one back here does have 3 contacts, but only uses 2 of them. That's the single pole, single throw. And this one needs all 3 contacts. So perhaps I can swap the 2 and reinstall this contact, epoxy it in place. That's the plan anyways. And also got a comment about it looked like the switch was smashed back. I don't know about that. In fact, I'd say no, it isn't, because this top phenolic wafer is notched out and it's firmly locked in place. So I think that's just how it's made. But this is just back a little bit. I don't think anything got smashed in or anything. So, you know, this stuff slides fine. You can't push this back because it would smash into this, I think. So what am I going to do? I suppose what I really need to do is disconnect the wires and unmount it. As painful as that will be, because I don't want to lose track of anything, but I need to do some surgery on it and examine it. I should probably also, when I take it out, bend these back very carefully so I can flip this over, examine it, try to glue that back in place, clean up all the points, make sure everything is sound. While I research possible replacements for the opera glass switch, I'm giving the cabinet a little TLC. It's an unusual design in that once you take the top off the set to service the chassis, you have the entire cabinet. It's this piece of U-shaped bent plywood covered in mahogany veneer. Very easy to work on because it's lightweight and easy to move around. Alright, I gave it the usual treatment. Gojo pumice-free hand cleaner, and then I'll wipe down with denatured alcohol to remove all traces of the Gojo. Howard's Restore Finish Mahogany, which I'm just waiting to completely set up, and then Howard's Feed and Wax. That will make it shine a little bit. It's kind of dull after all that cleaning. Here it is after the Howard's Feed and Wax. The bright lights are making it a little hard to film. The shininess will diminish a little bit in an hour or two as the oil evaporates, sets in, whatever it does. And then I'll buff it out a bit more and it'll get a real nice mellow look to it. After I got the switch all apart and examined more closely the charred damage, I'm concerned about reliability if I just epoxy that contact back in there and try to keep going with it. So I've been researching alternatives. Turns out there are 2 major applications for a latching multi-suction switch. The 3PDT is what this would be, 3-pole double terminal. One is a foot stomp switch used in guitar effect pedals. Another is multimeters. So this guy. My concern with both is that, especially on the effects pedal stomp switches, the voltage rating on them. So one I was looking at rated for 9 volts DC only, and high current, because typically those are run on low voltage. So why would they be spec'd out for high voltage applications? However, these seem to be a little more encouraging. So I found one on Mauser Electronics. I'll link to it in the description. It's a 4-pole double terminal, insulation dielectric strength between switch contacts is over 1,000 volts, I believe. So that made me feel better. The switch contact rating is only 30 volts DC, 125 volts AC, if I recall correctly. However, if you look at it where these are used, there's not a lot of voltage across them, I'm pretty sure, so I don't think that's going to be the issue. The issue was, where it fried, was not between 2 switch contacts, it was between 2 separate entire switching elements. So that's where that high dielectric strength between contacts comes into play. It's $20, so it's going to be a little bit of a gamble, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to leave off here while I wait for that to show up. I'll finish doing detailing on the cabinet, cleaning up the chassis. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.